He dresses like his first name is Sheev.
Greetings.
Hola.
Konnichiwa.
And Kotoya. Welcome to the first episode of Clone Wars Comm Chatter, the first deep dive discussion to use an enhanced chronological viewing order for the animated series Star Wars The Clone Wars. I'm your droid host, Billy Bueller, and joining me here on the panel is a changeling always in need of a hot cup of Jawa juice, Corinne.
Hey.
Next to her is someone who claims to be a partially shaved Wookiee, but we suspect it's really something from the Forest Moon of Endor, Justin. And Corinne, we also have our Intercepted Transmissions Crew, beginning with our scientific control, our porg in a spice mine, Bridget.
Oh, I'm the little puffball.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Bridget. I'm the porg in the spice mine.
I love you, Bridget.
I should just be in the background, like it's Bridget. I love you, Bridget.
A message from me to you.
And lastly, Republic credits are no good to him because he needs something more real. Chris Godin. So before we get started, let's get to know everyone on the panel a little bit there for the folks out there.
I'm sorry.
Do you want another take on that one? Or do you want...
I know we were kidding about me.
No, I knew it was going to happen. 100%.
I know we were kidding
Keeping
about
the
me.
take! Alright! Keeping the take! So while she recovers, Justin, this is... you want to tell us, what's your exposure to Star Wars, and Clone Wars in particular?
Okay. I'm a very big fan of Star Wars in general. I've been a fan of Star Wars for, like, God knows how long. As long 20 years minimum. Probably more than that, actually.
More.
Yeah. And so I know a lot of expanded universe legends now. Movies a million times over. Clone Wars I've seen about the first half of the first season and the movie. So that's basically where Clone Wars is. But I know the books, I know video games, I know all that stuff with the old legend stuff. Cool.
All right. Well, that's awesome because Clone Wars was developed while the expanding universe was still at least partially canon.
Yeah.
A lot of references were made to the expanding universe, so it has sort of a foot in both worlds beyond the reboot when Disney purchased the franchise. So it kind of connects to all the different phases being sort of somewhere in the middle there, sort of T-canon as they called it. What was your favorite Star Wars film that isn't The Empire Strikes Back?
Well, I'm going to say there are probably two that are like right below Empire Strikes Back, which is Last Jedi and Rogue One. I really like some of the Disney era movies, and those two are really good for me. Like, I just really, really like them.
Okay. All right, well, Corinne, same questions.
I have had full exposure to all of the movies. I've had limited Legends exposure. I didn't go through many of the books. More just a couple of the games, but
Absorbed through osmosis, or
definitely getting a bunch from him.
Oh, you got some expanding universe on me again, man. Oh,
Legends. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Favorite movie besides Empire Strikes Back?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go with Last Jedi too, if only because it was Left Turns the movie, and there was some stuff that I feel like we've been waiting for, and that felt very like gratifying to me to watch. So the most recent really good Star Wars movie is gonna have to be Last Jedi for me,
as opposed to the recent. Okay, well,
the ones that I was I could watch.
I like
this.
Solo, and I think it ended up being better, but then it ended up being better than it could have been.
Yes.
So me, I've Star
all
Wars,
of it.
all of it. So I grew up in the dark ages after the video, the video era, the VHS era. I had all the leftover action figures and stuff from the garage sales that the parents raided.
Oh yeah, you didn't mention your collection.
Oh my god, I shouldn't.
Went really big into the expanding universe in the 90s, at least for the first part of the 90s. Trailed out of the later part of the 90s. Then got really back into it hardcore in the early 2000s or so, around the time New Jedi Order was hitting at the midpoint. That led to me being like a moderator on the literature forum of the Jedi Council boards on the Force.net, leading up to when Clone Wars actually came out. So I've been with Clone Wars since it was announced, when this poster was handed out for the trailer debut at Celebration 4 in LA, and which is now over 10 years ago.
Ooh.
Yes, well, I mean, the show
Make
came
us-
out
make us all
last
feel
year.
old, Billy.
Yeah, right. Well, hey, it's the 10th anniversary, and that's why they're bringing Clone Wars back
Yeah,
for
Yeah.
for Disney Plus and giving us those extra episodes to sort of finish out the series in a more proper manner after it was sort of saved and canceled twice.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I've deep dived into it when it came out. I've been setting up this show. I've also deep dived back into it and to help come up with that enhanced viewing order based on the official order that was released. And so that allows experience to be different for me because I never got a chance to go through it in any of the chronological orders. I'd read about it and I could picture it in my head, but since this is really based on that, this is sort of a way of experiencing that with some of the adjusting some of the issues that I noticed along the way. And yeah, so it's really kind of all into it there from beginning to end. And that's probably too long of an answer for. I would have edited that down, but if we're leaving her earlier taking here with the burp, then I have to kind of
I'm
keep
so
this all.
sorry.
No.
We joked about it. It was too funny.
Yes, no. And as far as favorite film goes, it's not Empire. I'd probably go with Rogue One.
I know you really liked Rogue One.
I
It
really
was a
liked
good
Rogue One.
movie.
Like the it started off like when I first saw it, I'm like, okay, maybe the first part wasn't good, the second half, but then I really kind of acclimated into it, and I think it just really nailed everything without being nostalgic. Like it wasn't about nostalgia, even though they really nailed the feel of everything from that era, and just it was very, very intense, very emotional. Obviously, one of the more adult ones like Empire.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and likewise, like I said, a lot of things you talked about with Last Jedi, I appreciated as well. I don't put it up as high as those two though. But you know, yeah, I mean,
How dare your opinions be so wrong, Billy?
I know there's people out there that
We're all
dislike
gonna-
the film, but it's
We're all going to be really wrong to somebody.
My exposure to Star Wars, period, is like the trilogy. Is that it? Trilogy.
There's
We have we have a version of we have a movie. And it comes on 3 VHSs. That's how old that is. I watched it maybe once, and I was really young. And then the Clone Wars was always on Cartoon Network, and I would catch glimpses of it because my brother would watch it. Lots of desert scapes. Is Jabba the Hutt the one that looks like a snot? Yeah, he looks like a really big snot. So all I remember is he was gross, and now people make jokes about him because he looks like this. And there's R2-D2 and the robot and Princess Leia. I know the main characters. That's it. I know that the Luke line, Luke I'm your father line, is not really actually Luke I'm your father. It's there's a different line, and I know that they're books. Stormtroopers, they can't shoot for shit. That's it.
okay. All right. Take 2. No, burp louder next time. No.
It's just Merp. I can't stop laughing.
Loved Star Wars ever since I was a kid. The first thing I remember is watching then Star Wars, now A New Hope, with my family, and then eventually my best friend, aka Billy. And we watched it so much that we would recite the movies. We could actually mute the movie if we wanted to and just recite lines back and forth. The joys of being a kid and having all that extra space in your brain. As for Clone Wars, I've watched through the series a few times. It's a wonderful series and really, really shows what creative minds can do.
It's not like we ended up using that empty space for anything else because we can still quote the movies back and forth to one another. What is your favorite Star Wars film that is not The Empire Strikes Back?
Oh, that's an easy one, actually. Okay, good. So, Empire is either number 1 or 2. I'm not sure anymore. Ever since Rogue One came out, I've been absolutely enamored and in love with that movie. It just embodies Star Wars. And the ironic part is there's no Jedi.
And that's really what this series will be exploring. Perspectives from everyone, from newcomers to veterans of both the franchise and the Clone Wars series in particular. And we'll be taking a look at every story arc in each episode, using the enhanced chronological viewing order as part of the Streamlining Sci-Fi series. You can find the link to the video below. So if you want to check that out and follow along with us in this order, it's very similar to the official chronological order, but it does have, as the name implies, some enhancements to help streamline that viewing experience. Yeah, so I think that's everything here. So let's go ahead and we're going to jump into Season 0. and the Christophsis Trilogy.
I have emotions.
This is, as the name implies, 3 episodes. These include the 2 episodes that acted as a prequel to the Clone Wars theatrical film, as well as the episode that was integrated into the Clone Wars theatrical film as its opening sequence. They all share the same location of Christophsis, which we're going to show up on the map right now. So you can see where it's located in the galaxy of Star Wars. It's near Tatooine and Geonosis, roughly, along the Corellian trade route in the Outer Rim. So we got a lot of those kind of mineral-rich areas out in that section there. You had Geonosis, obviously, has a lot of building and mining, presumably, going on. And Tatooine, I think there was even... Wasn't there a backstory of Tatooine?
Yeah.
How it was like, you used to have the people on Tatooine are there because they were there for mining or something like that a long time ago, but now it's just like, they're just stuck there because they didn't find anything good or whatever.
Yeah.
The first episode is going to be Season 2, Episode 16, Cat and Mouse. This was also an episode that was produced by CGCG. There was actually 2 animation houses working on this show, so they kind of alternated a lot of times.
Oh.
CGCG actually ended up doing a lot of the episodes, at least as far as I can tell from the credits, because usually they'll say in the back like CGCG.
Okay.
If they don't, it's assumed to be Lucasfilm Animation in Singapore.
Okay.
I might be a little off on some of those attributions. In the film, it's a lot harder too because they both worked on it.
Okay.
But for the most part, I believe that, especially in some of these earlier episodes, like as you get in, you might see a few where the animation style was a little different because it was early on, and one production team was still kind of getting in line with the other.
I could see that.
Yes, you might see that with a little bit, and I'll bring that up later on when we get to those episodes in future shows. We have the Jedi fortune cookie at the front of it, which was a wise leader knows when to follow. Sometimes they're called. There was another alternate name for those, I think, but they were originally called Jedi fortune cookies. I think Wikipedia calls it, like in the canon section, calls them something different. Okay. But back in the day when they first aired, that's what they were calling them.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's what the episode guides still use and like some of the behind the scenes stuff. So I like the term. This one we had Anakin with a ship with a cloaking device and trying to run a blockade to Christophsis against Admiral Trench. Yes.
I hate him so much.
He was great.
Do you know what trench is for? Trench for tarantula. Ah! Anyway, that totally fits with regular Star Wars naming conventions, and it makes me angry.
Oh, I mean, it was great.
Angry in a good way, though, right?
Yes,
Angry
in a good way.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, I mean, it makes sense though, because like all these, like if you go back to the cantina, like a lot of those creatures were just like, oh, that is the goat creature, and that is
that's the prime mantis creature.
Oh, it's so cornball, and like I love it and hate it at the same time. Like, of course, this is how it has to be,
exactly.
and I have so much affection for it. But oh my god,
he could be in the background of Jabba's palace, whatever. That's with the camel guy, and he was born to be an action figure with a Kenner name.
Yes,
actually,
yes.
But yeah, I
actually liked the voice performance too, which I think was Corey Burton. D. Bradley Baker pulled him off. Okay. So same actor who does the clones. And
the voice acting was really good. I was gonna say it reminded me a lot of, and this is just like it was very Boss Nassy from Phantom Menace, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting, but different, obviously, but similar kind of, deep voice and the weird clicking note.
Yeah, what surprised me because what I thought was Corey Burton, because a lot of times he's the one who does like those deeper voices, like he does Count Dooku and those types of voices and stuff, but he's also like done other things too, like Shockwave on Transformers and a bunch of. So he's a very versatile one too. But Baker is obviously very versatile in this case as well. Sure, fooled me. And I wrote this, so
you had his name written down. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Gotta get credit where credit's due. But yeah, I mean, he reminded me a lot of. Did you ever see Transformers Beast Wars?
I've seen like 2 episodes, like 10 years ago.
Like
really,
the Megatron from Beast Wars has a very similar. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same actor in some cases, but it's
very easily could be voice actor.
Well, Transformers, it's got to be Corey Burton, but now I think it might be Baker. Actually, it's possible. But very much Megatron in those shows was always had this very yes.
Ah.
Like it had that very kind
Like-
of sense to it.
Like hand rubbing, I am evil.
Exactly. Actually, I think I had like there was another line of his where he goes, "Foolish Republic scum, your
Yes.
puny torpedoes are no match for my thermo shields."
Yes.
That has to have come from the Lord Gorlock commercial.
Oh,
Like,
jeez.
puny. Your ray is no match for Lord Gorlock. Like, that has to be it. There's
it
no
was just-
way that is not it.
It was so cornball, campy,
was
evil.
great.
Like
It was great.
it was
He
amazing.
was great.
Yeah, it was just, that
like
was...
and the clicking was this perfect cherry on top of the I hate it cake.
Well, I loved how they even animated his like extra arms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He was actually doing things with the extra arms. They weren't
That's-
just
Yeah.
there for like set dressing.
And they used, like, the fact that, like, tarantulas are very kind of, like, hairy or
Yeah.
whatever, so he has something to
His neck
stroke.
rub.
Yes.
He's
Yes.
Almost like a mustache kind of
But
thing.
it's
Exactly,
just his
yeah.
mandibles. He's just like.
You know I'm evil. Because I go, yes, when I stroke my beard.
Just like speaking on details really quickly, I think that's something that the Clone Wars generally is doing really well.
yeah.
Is they've put all of this attention to detail, either in the character motions or the background,
The background stuff.
even
yeah.
just textures. There is so much detail. Like you
beautiful.
will never just see a flat wall, and that's really kind of like
It's a
I
good world
appreciate
building
that.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a good job of, especially with like some. Well, I know this is a season 2 episode, but a lot of those earlier episodes, they did a lot with very little because they were still making assets
I
as
can
they were going
understand
along.
that,
They only
yeah.
had so many characters. They didn't have. They only had so many sets. So, and we'll get to it probably in the next episode when we talk about the like Coruscant and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they actually a lot of the way they were only able to pull that off is they couldn't build Coruscant yet. So it's a 2D matte painting, but like they did it in a 3D space to kind of pull the trick off. So it's almost like how they did it with the movies. Like if you had made Coruscant back in the 80s, it would have been a matte painting with models and
Absolutely,
stuff. You know,
yeah.
like maybe in the foreground, unless you spent like a movie's budget worth on like Blade Runner quality
No, that's
like
all right.
city miles, which not everyone's going to be able to do and stuff. But yeah, no, they are definitely gorgeous.
Like just
And
based on TV shows nowadays, to see that level of world building, and of course it's going to happen with the Star Wars, of course, but to see that level of detail just in the background shows to me like so much care and attention. Even if I don't necessarily like enjoy the storyline of a specific episode, they still gave a shit.
Yeah.
It's great.
you're getting a part of the Star Wars universe for
Yeah.
certain.
This is
even if
wholly
you're like, yeah,
fleshed
that's not
out.
my favorite episode, but
Well,
it could be like,
This is wholly
Well,
fleshed
especially
out,
with
this
like
space.
ships and stuff like that, ships and the interiors and stuff
the,
like that.
the-
It's
the-
insane.
The ship's almost like you almost could go for as a movie. Like
Exactly.
it's almost live action. Like
Yeah.
it's closer than the characters are obviously because they're very stylized. But like if you saw a trailer that just had like the space battle footage
Yes.
throughout. I mean, obviously we're still just getting started, but you go out to later in the show, like when they get bigger and bigger conflicts, it's like. This is as big as anything we saw in the movie, or
Yeah,
and like
and
or
almost-
even early on, the first time you see those acclamators and those Venator Star Destroyers, it's like if you weren't seeing when you saw the trailer for this movie in the theater, for the movie, in theaters, it's like okay, yeah, that almost looks like something right out of Attack the Clones. Or
Oh,
whatever,
100%,
release.
yeah.
And then the more and more Lucas became involved in the series as it went on, he sank more and more of his own money into it. Like by the end of the show, he was basically spending more money than the shows were making because he wanted to get those really high quality
that's
visuals and
fantastic
stuff
in some ways, yeah.
which is probably one reason why it got canceled too.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Well, let's go through some of the other characters, I guess, first before we go into some of the story parts.
We jumped on the spider.
Yeah, the
and
spider.
Spiders.
We squished that spider down. Kill it! Kill it! Kill it! Here you go. So we also had Admiral Wolf Yularen,
I love him.
who's voiced by Tom Kane, who does several characters in the show, including Yoda, and he's also the narrator, who has been determined. It's definitive that he is not the same character, even though they have very similar.
I was gonna.
There's a little bit of difference to that, but I actually got the chance to meet Tom Kane at a convention
Okay.
and talk to him about that, and he asked him about it, and yeah, he kind of like demonstrated a little bit of like the distinctions there and stuff, but they're meant to be distinct characters.
Okay.
But people made that assumption because Yularen is actually a character from A New Hope.
Okay.
He is at the Death Star conference table.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Oh.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
He is wearing the white uniform and the white mustache and stuff,
Yep,
whatever.
that's what
Okay.
I thought.
So that's the Imperial Security Bureau thing. So people are thinking, Imperial Security Bureau (ISB) is sort of like the secret police kind of the Empire, it makes sense that he'd be in charge of propaganda, which these newsreels are sort of designed to be,
And that's kind of
evoking.
how it sounds
That's really
like,
what it's supposed to be. Those old serial, whoa, it's out,
Yeah.
and it's keep it up the fight, boys,
Yeah.
the evil separatists. And it's cool to see. At least I thought is that this is sort of like the early part of his career and him meeting Anakin. They'll be in the same room. 20 years later down the road or what have you. And you sort of see that at the beginning of that relationship. And at the end of this episode, they actually, he mentions that he already knows the Chancellor.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
they also have that in common too. So you can see why they went up the ranks. And because I think like Lucas's story was sort of like supposed to be that the Death Star was supposed to have like the top people of the Empire on there and stuff for the most part.
Sense.
So it makes sense that he'd be one of them in that regards. And then there's Krennic, who's just trying to wheedle his way in.
No, exactly.
Yeah, poor Krennic, the empty chair.
No, I don't really feel bad for him.
I love Krennic.
He was a great villain.
He was amazing.
He was a great villain. I don't feel it was.
We've gotten so sidelined this, but we have to. Well, I love Rogue One so much. I don't mind going on tangent.
Fantastic.
Mean Lord Anakin goes, "Don't choke on your aspirations." Krennic's like, "God damn it, this is who I work for."
But meanwhile, like Krennic's also like, "But I'm the only competent Imperial besides Tarkin. It's taken us 40 years." And then we also get a lot of his backstory in a way too. Like he has his history with the Spider.
Yes. Yeah.
You have a lot in common with Yularen. Do you like Yularen? Is he your avatar now all of a sudden?
He's such a skeptic, and I love him. He's just, Anakin, are you sure this is a good idea? No! You're going to do it anyway. Nope.
Yes. As long as we're on the same page.
General Kenobi won't like this. Oh, I know.
Yep.
Okay, at least we're all informed.
There's an adjustment period to be had here. It's like, oh, we're doing it this way.
Yep.
I see now. Do I agree with this? I agree with this. I have to reconsider my future now.
You just know at some point he's just along for the ride. He's like, this is the path of least resistance.
He was a good guy. He was gonna be a good person for all his life until he met Anakin. And Anakin's like, then he's like, you know what? Empire. Yeah, that's the way. I was on the fence before about that whole fascism thing, but now I've seen the results. Yeah. Woo! Go Empire!
Jeez. Slippery slope.
I know, right? Well, it's a gradual slope. This is the top of the hill.
That's exactly
all it is.
Oh,
Obviously, we've seen them in the films, but this is the first introduction of the B-1 battle droid on the series that we've seen chronologically. Who are, we see a lot of droid humor in some of these earlier episodes.
Yep.
But I think we'll talk about that in a future one because there's a couple more that go a lot more heavier into it. But God, I love it. Roger.
I think they're. I look at them and I look at how they're portrayed, and I'm just like, Asajj Ventress hates the crap out of all of you, doesn't she? Like, you're working surrounded by morons, and it's just.
It seems like all the leadership of the Separatists just don't like the battle droids very much.
I think the the Trade Federation. Sorry, not the Trade Federation. I should say but the Newt Gunray and the Separatist people, they're okay with it because it's cost effective and they don't need to recruit people, and so that allows them to be evil very easily.
Yeah.
Some of the clones that we get introduced to here, some of these are going to be one-off characters so far, but other ones are going to be recurring. But we have Clone Commander Blackout. He's in charge of that stealth ship. He's got those red and yellow markings on it, which the sort of stealth ship armor I think is somewhat unique to this episode. I think
I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe I don't know if it's in the background or not, but I mean I don't recall spotting it again later.
I
in the
admit
series.
when I saw large groups of clones, I just kind of tuned the background ones out. So, because there was so many to focus on, and they're all so similar.
Well, I only list the ones that definitely have like lines or
It's
not, if they just have a number, obviously they didn't even care at all for us. You're not even like a one-off character. You're just like here to be like something like a line of dialogue. You know?
Yeah.
You're like CT-2565 is dead.
Well,
not CT-2565. I need my 2665. We also got Clone Commander Cody, who appeared in Revenge of the Sith, who was tied to Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think we only see him briefly in this one, though, like in his just regular uniform, not in his armor. Yeah. But we do see quite a bit of him with like the yellow markings and stuff as the show goes on. Clone Trooper Spark ends up being our rookie of the stealth crew. I believe he's also a one-off as well, but it's just cool to like, hey Sparky, join up, you know, kind of thing. It's like sometimes they're getting a really
Sometimes,
spot on the nose there with the name.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
But it's
that
like
was
I wonder how much of the clones it's that the
slick. Anyway.
yeah. I wonder how much of the clone like get influenced by their names. Like we see some people take their names based on their attributes, but I wonder how it's like my name's Spark. I gotta be Sparky now. Whatever,
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
thing.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of that. Yeah.
What's your name? Red Shirt. Oh. Oh. I'm gonna go over there.
What does red shirt mean? Not this series, kid, but it's fine.
Wrong franchise. Not taking the chance. Sorry. We're already cannon fodder. There's like 70 clones in the show, and I can't memorize them. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say half of these pages are just
Probably
like
just clone names.
Yeah.
yeah, no, they are actually. This
Yeah.
whole page is clone names.
Yep.
We got Bail Organa. Actually, him and Obi-Wan, I think, might be an interesting point to make.
Okay.
Because we were getting payoff of Leia's line from A New Hope.
That made me so mad.
The other line. Not the line that I think you're thinking of.
Oh, okay.
That years ago you served my father.
Yes.
as a
That's
clone.
Okay,
fair.
okay,
That's
okay.
fair.
That is not the line I was thinking of.
Yes. We also get the tactical droid for the first time, which was an added thing because I guess they wanted to have like disposable villains that were like not just nameless droids kind of thing, had a little bit more personality to them. They were actually developed for like an episode we'll see later chronologically, but this is the first chronological appearance that we're going to see. This one was called TI-99, voiced by Phil Lamar.
Oh.
Phil Lamar did it.
Yes.
I love Phil Lamar.
Yes. Oh, you know, I should probably also jump back to the clones. Obviously, we've already said are Deep Bradley Baker, but we've got Anakin Skywalker is played by Matt Lanter, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is James Arnold Taylor. Phil Lamar also does Bail Organa as well.
Oh, does he?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. They all do a really good job for the most part. Like.
Yes, the tactical droid in particular has got that sort of sound wave-esque, synthesized, by your command type of voice to it. Although I think it was actually, influenced by that sort of stuff too. Like they mentioned like Battlestar Galactica and stuff, the original Battlestar Galactica. You got a lot of vehicles and starships involved in this one because we had the blockade going around Christophsis.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of it in the movies, but it's nice to see them fleshed out here because so many of them were just kind of thrown at us in Revenge of the Sith for like that one battle.
Yeah.
So then they never had a chance to really sink in like the way a Star Destroyer did, or like or something smaller like a cruiser would here or there. So and since there's so many different variety of ones, it's not just like all the same. It's like the Empire had just like one ship plus the Super Star Destroyer.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Whereas this is like a bunch of different separatist forces, and they're all come from different places. We see the Trade Federation battleship again.
Yep.
The Munificent class star frigate. That is the Banking Clan ship. Those are the ones that are a little bit greener, and smaller, with the kind of vertical fin and the hook to it. They're the ones we're kind of seeing as being like almost like their mainline cruisers. I think in a lot of these shows we see them the most. I think early on in the series.
That makes some sense.
So they're sort of like becoming the face of the separatists more, and they're saving the battleships for more blockade type of functions.
Yeah, that would make some sense too.
But we also get the Providence class dreadnought, which is what Admiral Trench is running. Okay. Which I believe is a variation of something from Revenge of the Sith, or an unused Revenge of the Sith design. Like that. It has a very much evokes that Invisible Hand, like General Grievous' flagship type of ship. The Hyena class droid bomber, which I thought was a really cool addition to it. Because they have like the double cockpit look to them, like they do with the TIE bombers from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
But they also have the hyena laugh too, so they go and then take off or whatever. And it pairs so well with the Vulture droids. Yeah. Which is cool to see them emphasize here because they didn't really emphasize that a lot in the films. Like you got a little bit of that in Revenge of the Sith where it's crawling with Vulture droids. Oh, they're called Vulture droids now instead of droid starfighters. They didn't really emphasize the walking modes a lot in
No, but it was interesting to see that in general. I mean, some of the ship stuff they do is just fantastic. It really does look really good, especially in this episode. In general, just I like the little variations they have on how the droids move and how they're put together and stuff like that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it really it helps expand the things without making it so varied that you're wondering why isn't all of this in the next film. Exactly. It's like, okay, they have it, it's just not at this battle, and it's believable that it's not being used there for whatever reason. Some other things from the films, we had the armored assault tank from the Trade Federation briefly. I think it must be on the it was probably in the newsreel with the battle on the ground.
That would make some sense.
Yeah, you see the Trade Federation tank there. You have the Republic's ATTE walkers, probably in the hangar bays, probably. Yeah. So we're not really seeing them in action.
Yeah, they were in the background.
Yeah, we're not really seeing them in action just yet, but we're from the film, so they're not necessarily new here. But it's the first time we're seeing them in the series. These first few episodes of the show, we're going to have a lot longer list because we're getting all the ones from the films showing up for the first time, and they only add a few more each time. So these first few ones get a little longer. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about too many of them. We had the Pelta class frigate, which is a Republic medical frigate. So that's one of the smaller ones. It's almost blockade runner like. We had the new class transport, which was the Republic attack shuttle. That's probably what people just, we saw people arriving on board the ship. We had the Venator class Star Destroyer, which is cool to see this kind of earlier in the war, because Attack of the Clones, we didn't see them.
Yeah.
We only had the Calamiter transports.
Yes.
So now we're getting the heavier ones. So I'm surprised a little bit that they're available this early.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it's but it's interesting to see them use that, which makes sense because it makes better for takeoff. It's more for starfighters and stuff than the other one was.
Absolutely.
And we get two named ones. They don't say them in the show, but we have both the Negotiator and the Resolute.
Okay.
So we have Obi-Wan's command ship and Anakin's command ship. And I believe we can tell the Resolute by it being red conning towers.
Okay.
So that's we can see that that's how you can kind of tell that it's a recurring ship. It's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be the ones that are in charge of each fleet. The lead one's always supposed to be red. So there might be other ones that are red or colored, but in this case, since we're mostly seeing Anakin's fleet or Obi-Wan's fleet, that's usually going to be the one that's going to be there. So I think that's... Oh, and the last ship that obviously we've got to talk about is the stealth ship itself. That's the core of this episode. So, no ship that small has a cloaking device. they kind of... They managed to at least not forget that line by saying, no ship this small usually has a cloaking device. So... from what I was looking into, the bit behind the scenes stuff that came from Lucas, and
really,
and it was Dave Filoni, the director in charge of the series, who was like, "Hey, Lucas, no ship that small has a cloaking device."
Okay,
and Lucas doesn't care. He's like, "Okay," and they do now.
It was definitely interesting. I mean, the fact that it was just invisible was a little odd, I would say. I wasn't expecting that with a, because usually stealth is just, it doesn't turn invisible, but it was like...
You're thinking like radar jamming versus Klingon cloaking
technology.
Exactly.
So it's like seeing it invisible was like, oh, okay, we're talking that kind of stealth.
Yeah.
Now, why not make this but bigger?
Prototype.
They get to slap a lot onto that word as an excuse. It seemed to work very well, with the only minor drawback of, this is the prototype, the first of its kind. I've seen this before. I'm
thinking that might be the out, actually, then. Maybe it's because, someone knows how to track it, and that got, once word got around, that's like, okay, then you really can't, they're not as useful now. And they're so expensive that if people can, once they know to look for it, it's not worth having anymore.
Are there any other Star Wars ships that have invisible technology like that?
Rebel Assault 2. PC game.
Oh wow! That's going back a way.
That was one of my first Star Wars games.
I haven't played that.
Loved that
so
game
long.
so much. Full motion videos, cutscenes, and stuff. But the whole premise of that was that the Empire had their secret facility, and they were developing.
Well, right there.
Yeah.
Cloaking ties, phantom ties. They were really V-38 assault fighters, not TIE fighters, but they had it was a three-wing, larger type of TIE fighter-esque vehicle. And they were so cool. They had they were actually, their cloaking was kind of similar to what we saw here, actually.
Okay.
Like it had that sort of bluish purple energy, field to it or what have you going around it. So then it would vanish like full invisibility.
Okay.
But that project was destroyed completely.
Yeah.
Before it could be implemented, so it never got out. And it was based on a very specific mineral and stuff. So, and that's no longer canon, but
exactly.
But at the time, that's probably what they were trying to make.
That would make some sense.
It's either a great coincidence or a nice little touch that the energy just happened to be the same color.
Sure.
But I'm sure if they were going to deal with cloaking technology, they might have a look the information up somewhere. We were talking about lines that were echoing things from the films, and besides, there was also the Obi-Wan referencing a mercy mission.
Yeah,
it's like you're on a mercy mission this time in A New Hope. So I think that was another meant to tie into sort of a vaguely peripheral line. The cookie, as it were, was where did my pages go? It's right in front of me. We're gonna cut that part out, but the burp stays in.
We know what's really important here.
So we had a wise leader knows when to follow. So I guess my question would be: is it Obi-Wan following Anakin through this? Anakin following through Obi-Wan, or Yularen following Anakin?
would lean you learn
Yeah,
following
I
Anakin,
would
because
think so,
Anakin
too.
didn't follow Obi-Wan. He never does.
It could be an ironic cookie.
It might be
it could
well,
be.
all right, it might be a call out.
Or like, can you imagine if they're a literal cookie?
A wise leader knows when to follow. I've never followed you in my life, Master. Yes,
Take the hint,
Anakin.
Anakin. Take the hint.
Maybe it's a call out cookie. I don't know.
I'm thinking you, Lauren. Honestly, that's kind of how I read it, at least.
Yeah, if we're taking them seriously,
Yeah, if they're not being sarcastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible to read maybe slight subtext into the other ones, but I think the other one, you learn following Anakin being the main characters, it makes sense that they would be the focus
Yes,
of it.
yeah.
We got that. So the data screen in the episode when they're showing like the history of the ship and trench and stuff, the text is actually just like an entry from Wikipedia translated to Aurebesh.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Oh, that's funny. Actually.
yeah.
but it's I like that it's not just like lorem ipsum in Arabesh. Like
Yeah.
it's full blown.
actually
Here's
something.
just an
Yeah.
article.
For most of this show, it actually is that people went and translated and stuff.
That's cute, though.
I appreciate.
That's pretty nice.
So we had a couple lines too. We're talking about things that would echo back to things. So
Oh. Shall I introduce this one?
go ahead if you want. There's the exact quote. If you want to have bad memories.
Help us, General Kenobi. You're our only hope.
Oh
Because,
boy.
like father, like daughter, apparently, they only know how to go run into one dude with the same line, and he's sitting there watching this
No.
play like, I'm getting flashbacks. Oh, the
No,
Organas.
Look, Bell
Like,
Organa told the story to Princess Leia, and there you go. She's echoing the line back.
Hey, Lucas said that the stormtrooper who hits his head is getting that trait genetically from Jango Fett.
Right.
So Leia can get that genetically from Bail Organa in the galaxy far away. Genetics are very weird there with the Force.
Yes.
Apparently.
Those midichlorians have some weird hobbies.
You know the mitochondrial DNA? We got midichlorian DNA.
Oh boy.
And they got a sense of humor, it turns out.
Like, the instant he said it, I was just like, oh boy, you went
Yeah.
for the cheap shots. Like, obviously it's these little nods and callbacks are really fun, but that one to me, I personally like them subtler. This one
That was not subtle.
This was just, here's a call out!
Yeah, well, we're going to hit a few of those
I know
over the
we
first
are.
season and a half or so.
How many times did they say I've got a bad feeling about this?
I'm okay with that. I like because that's a tradition for me.
I am more okay with that than help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're our only hope.
I think the only thing with that is that it obviously was meant to be something that they do once per movie. It was never meant to be translated to like an episode.
Once per
version.
yeah.
episode.
But that's one of
yeah.
those things where it's worse when you actually binge watch it. Than
Yes,
when it was
and we
airing
were
on
talking
air,
about
you
this,
probably
actually.
wouldn't have
Yeah.
noticed as many.
Yeah.
But then back to back, you notice it. And
Yeah, so we binge watched, and
It's the only
it
way
was
to really do it
very
now.
obvious.
but at the same time, you get other benefits from binge watching it. So
Yeah.
it's like you
Yeah,
ignore
like, it
that
was-
because now the story makes more sense.
It was a
or
lot
whatever.
easier to follow story continuities, but the
dialogue, I
the-
would say.
Yeah.
well, not even the call outs seemed much more frequent, and then the whole dramatic arc in each episode felt very tired because we're watching it
Again,
14
yeah.
times in a row.
Right.
So
There was a quick shot also where we get really close to, I think, the side of a Munificent class ship, and
is that the one where they scrape the top as they pass by, or
it might be.
it's one of Anakin's close passes?
It might be. Yeah, I think so. But yeah, the shot out. I think it's out the cockpit, and it's very similar to that shot of end of Empire Strikes Back when the
Yes,
Falcon
I know
is
what you're
about
talking
to
about.
escape from the Executor and
Yeah.
they're flying right by
Yep.
it. So I think that might it could just be a coincidence again, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of intentional homages like that in the,
I
in the
wouldn't
show.
be
So
surprised.
and then lastly, there was a line where someone was, "There she is," and I just couldn't think of anything else but Wrath of Khan. There she is.
Wow.
There she is. Because there actually are, again, either intentional or unintentional references to other movies that are not Star Wars throughout this.
Oh, sure.
Especially the first season or two, again, and a lot more that become even more obvious overall homages to specific films. But like little lines there, I always throw back, and I think that it's interesting to kind of note them that they were here not even chronologically from the beginning.
Because I was trying to pay
Yeah.
attention to the animation. The animation is a lot better. I actually didn't hate it. I usually don't like CGI too much, but over the years, as things usually do, it's gotten a lot better. And I find that this particular show is very clean. Like the line's very clean. It's not too rough on the eyes. Everything like flows pretty nicely. Ben 10 originally did like a CGI, and it was terrible. The art style is actually pretty nice. Like everyone's face just like outside of the clones, obviously, everyone's faces are very unique. I really like the facial differentiation between everyone, so you don't get stuck with like face sameness,
Right.
which can become tiresome. And I think that was such a unique story, from what I'm understanding, from like the vastness of this world. It's nice to see that you have this type of difference in everyone's faces. It's a lot more fun, especially if you enjoy a good story and you get to be thrown in such action right away. Like there's fighting, there's a king, there's a supervillain, there's Obi-Wan, who everyone kind of you vaguely know who Obi-Wan Kenobi is. You vaguely know who like each of the characters are. So now to see this different rendition of them from what you've seen in like the movies is really cool. Did I mention that Anakin looks like Hercules?
Like in terms of the face?
Yeah, his design reminds me of Hercules, like from the 90s version of Hercules.
That's gonna be hard to unsee now.
I enjoyed Cat and Mouse. It was interesting to see the different tactics employed by both sides, both the Republic and Anakin, who comes in hard and strong on everything he does. You can see that throughout the trilogy, the prequel trilogy, as well as now you're seeing it in the Clone Wars itself and how he's the tactician behind getting everything done. The coolest part of the episode is to watch how Anakin ends up, spoiler alert, winning the whole battle, right? And defeating the commander, because he can think even ahead. He knows what the commander's going to do based on knowing his tactics and having Wolf Yularen with him, who, by the way, is a secret hero of mine in the Star Wars universe. When I first saw Yularen in these episodes, it brought back all the memories from childhood, right? So, yeah, you see him make a quick cameo. He's not even mentioned in A New Hope. And then years and years later, they come out with this crazy card game that I sold all my Magic cards for. Oops. I mean, wow, that was a mistake, because they're worthless, and Magic cards from 95, 96 are worth tons of money now. But anyway, I played Star Wars CCG with Billy. Constantly, we would truck our cards over to each other's houses. And just because this dude was sitting at the conference room table in A New Hope when Vader chokes Mahdi, it was just priceless. He was my dude. Once I saw his card and I had his card in my man, he went into every single one of my decks. I always had to have him, only because I knew this guy was super cool. Why? Because he knew Vader and he knew Tarkin and he watched Mahdi get choked. I mean, perfect.
And also, he wasn't a rare card, so it was a lot easier to put him into the deck, wasn't he? I think also because like he's like one of those elements I think that helped make that game's hook more obvious, because it was one of those characters where like you probably didn't really notice him when you watched the film, but he's there and the card focuses on that. So there's certain all these background characters like that where it's, oh yeah, that person's there, so now you're aware of these peripheral elements of the film that you really weren't paying attention to originally, and kind of added a little more additional texture to the experience of watching the films themselves.
Right. Like I said, having watched these movies thousands and thousands of times, it's amazing how that game integrated and really taught us more. I mean, as super diehards, right? The fact that this card game could come out, 10 years after I started falling in love with this franchise and still teach me something about it was absolutely phenomenal to me. And the fact that this was the first real secondary kind of background character I picked up on in Wolf Yularen, now seeing him really be that tactician and the admiral that he was meant to be, and really like knowing how to fight and use his cruisers and his fighters and his bombers to his advantage, and the way he gets along with Anakin, who then, you see the foreshadowing of their relationship as he turns into Darth Vader. It's so amazing to watch and to see how this all kind of plays into each other and how it all feeds into the original trilogy.
Yeah, it gives you that sort of link from the past nostalgia and being an interesting pull from the films and expanded lore to the Clone Wars.
Exactly, yep.